Remastered versions of classic video games have become increasingly popular over the years. Capcom in particular has been releasing a lot of critically acclaimed remakes that update the games while still retaining the original spirit. That said, some publishers just want to cash in on the nostalgia factor. While many video game remasters have added new features and updated graphics, some have fallen short of expectations by offering little more than a high-resolution version of the original game. In some cases, remasters can even be worse, actively taking away content and feel the initial game delivered. Remakes like these often feel like empty shells of epic games. Mario, Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. Bowser roaring on the cover of Mario, Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. The remastered version of this classic Mario game was criticized for its lack of new content and changes in graphics that didn't improve the overall experience. Players believed the game's visuals were inferior to the original, and some of the added features, such as touch controls, felt deemed unnecessary and even detrimental to the gameplay. There was also the really bad timing. The 3DS was already an ancient handheld in 2019, and the fact that the previous iteration ran on higher frames over the remaster spoke volumes. Mario and Luigi. Bowser's Inside Story felt like a remaster going through the motions, not like the great 3D Mario games Nintendo was otherwise publishing at the time. 9. Dark Souls Remaster. Dark Souls Remaster. Despite being marketed as a significant upgrade to the original game, Dark Souls Remastered was met with disappointment by many fans. While the game received some improvements in the form of updated visuals, there were many issues with the remastered version, mostly the fact that there weren't that many changes at all. Be it Dark Souls boss fights, or the gameplay itself, there was no reason to pick up Dark Souls Remastered if players had already played through the original. While the return of multiplayer was nice, it just felt more like a glorified port than it did a true remaster. It's basically the Prepare to Die edition combined with the then popular community patches, and didn't change the gameplay enough to be interesting. 8. TMNT. Turtles in Time RESHELED playthrough. Turtles in Time is a classic arcade game with much nostalgia behind it thanks to its timeless graphics, music, and gameplay. Emphasis on timeless here, because its supposed remaster RESHELED was anything but. The new 3D graphics and art style were rightfully seen as a departure from the original game's charm and aesthetic. Fundamentally, RESHELED's gameplay wasn't all that different either. If anything, it sometimes felt floaty and unresponsive. There was a ton of missing content from the SNES version too, so it was basically a worse-looking version that changed nothing and subtracted from the original. Fans are better off finding the old arcade version. 7. MAFIA Roman 2 Definitive cover to MAFIA's Definitive Edition. MAFIA was one of those franchises that stood out from the sea of GTA clones, and that's why the remaster of its most beloved entry received so much backlash. While the graphics were improved, the remaster introduced several bugs and glitches that weren't present in the original game. Additionally, the game's AI was noticeably worse, and the game's cutscenes were poorly optimized, leading to significant frame rate drops and stuttering. Perhaps most disappointingly, despite being advertised as definitive, it didn't include any of the cut content, nor does it add anything new for players to enjoy. 6. Hitman HD Trilogy. Hitman HD Trilogy Box. The Hitman HD Trilogy weren't bad games by any means, but that's because the games they were remastering weren't bad. The remaster was heavily criticized for its lack of graphical improvements and technical issues. The Adventures of Agent 47, one of video games' best assassins, deserved more than just an overpriced HD upscale. Much of the bugs and gameplay issues present in the older games were still the exact same. In essence, the Hitman HD Trilogy felt like a cash grab to get the games on newer consoles with minimum effort. While the games weren't ruined by the remaster hardly improved them. 5. Assassin's Creed The Ezio Collection. Assassin's Creed's Ezio stands poised in official key art. The Ezio Collection was a remaster of 3 of the most popular games in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and it couldn't have been a lazier remaster if Ubisoft tried. The graphics were mildly improved, but the remaster introduced new bugs and glitches, including broken cutscenes and frame rate drops. Additionally, the Ezio Collection removed some of the original game's features, such as multiplayer modes for Brotherhood and Revelations. The fact the definitive remaster of the beloved games was riddled with more bugs than their predecessors was disappointing, to say the least. 4. Batman: Return to Arkham. Cover to the Batman: Arkham Asylum video game. Rocksteady's Batman games have been through a rough patch as of late, and the remasters are no exception. Despite being touted as an improvement, The game couldn't even run at 60 FPS on new generation consoles. The game's aesthetic was also streamlined, making it feel less grungy, and clashing with Kevin Conroy's great performance. As a game, Batman Return to Arkham certainly not terrible, because it's still Batman Arkham Asylum at the end of the day. That being said, the changes made were so minor that it really felt unnecessary. A simple upscaled port for a lower price would have gotten the game a lot less criticism upon release, especially since the poor frame rate made flaws stand out even more. 3. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater Tony Hawk Pro Skater HD. Ever since the 2000s ended, skateboarding games have had the worst luck. The graphical changes Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD offered were minute. It suffered from bugs and glitches, and the physics system was completely broken. The engine was ancient and really needed more revamping for a newer generation of consoles. Another major source of scrutiny was the lack of several iconic features. Only 8 songs from the original returned. There was no skateboard creator, build a character, or even local multiplayer like the old game did. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD was a remake that changed little while removing everything that made the game stand out. 2. Half-Life Source. Half-Life Source screenshot of gun. Half-Life is the landmark title that put Valve on the map in the games industry, which is why it's so shocking that they released such a poor remaster. What was meant to be a showcase of what the new Source engine could do became the complete opposite. Half-Life Source suffered from several bugs and glitches, not to mention the graphics were only marginally improved from the original game. Many of these bugs are attributed to a Steam update that wrecked much of the game's already unstable code. Most fans are probably better off just playing the fan-made Source engine mod Black Mesa instead of stealing themselves through the official clunky remaster. 1. Warcraft Roman 3 Reforged. Screenshot from Warcraft 3 Reforged. Despite being one of the most highly anticipated remasters of all time, Warcraft Roman 3 Reforged dropped the ball so badly that it started the public's turn on the once beloved company. The game's graphics were updated to match World of Warcraft's aesthetic, but its actual quality was subjective. The real issues were the cutting of features, several bugs, and glitches. Warcraft Roman 3 Reforged's graphical changes took up a lot of hard drive space despite its middling quality. The maps didn't change, and multiplayer servers frequently crashed. There were also a lot of missing multiplayer features such as profiles, ranked play, automated tourneys, separate matchmaking pools, and clans. In essence, it was an inferior version that Blizzard pushed as the definitive one.